In this video, we are going to learn how to solve linear equations. So linear means the equations that you will see, the highest exponent will not exceed 1. So solving an equation means you are finding the value or values that make a true statement when replaced for the variable. So there are some steps that we're going to follow to solve each equation no matter what it looks like. So for the first step, we are going to simplify if you can. So in lesson 1, we discussed how to use the distributive property and how to combine like terms. So let's go ahead and do step 1 for example 1. So the very first step is we're going to look at the left side of the equal sign and see if there's anything we can distribute. So no, because there's no parentheses, or like terms. So since 3x and negative 11x both have the same variable, those are like terms. And so in our calculator, or without a calculator, we would need to figure out what 3 minus 11 is. So that's negative 8x. And then we're going to bring down the plus 5 and the 29. So that was step 1. The next step is we want to make sure that the variable term is on one side. So if we look at this example here, step 2, we have this variable here all alone on one of the sides of the equation. So I usually highlight, especially if this is brand new, solving equations is new for you, or it's a topic that's giving you issues, I always highlight to remind myself that I have one variable in the problem and it's all on one, and the variable's on one side. Okay, so we want to get this variable here all by itself, so we either need to use addition or subtraction to remove this number here. So I want to get this isolated. So if I have a 5 and I want to remove a 5 and make this 0, I'm going to do minus 5. So they're always going to be opposites at this step here. Now I'm going to cross this out because this made 0. So I don't need to write down 0, but that's why that's getting crossed out. And then 29 minus 5 is 24. And now we're ready for step 3. So step 3 is now we want the constant term on the other side. So step 3, we have the constant on one side and we have the variable on the other. So we get to skip step 3. So again, we want the variable on one side. We wanted this all by itself. So when this is all by itself, the term with the variable and the constant is on the other side, then the very last step is to divide both sides by the coefficient. So the coefficient is just a fancy word for the number in front of the variable. So we're going to divide both sides by a negative 8. Okay, so notice we're not dividing by 8, the opposite of negative 8. We're dividing by the same number right here. So the reason why we are dividing by the same number is because negative 8 divided by negative 8, when you divide the same number by the same number, it doesn't make 0, it makes 1. So this right here is making 1x. So when we bring down x here, we can cross this out because we don't have to put a 1 in front of an x. We've talked about in lesson 1 that if you have an x, we know there's a 1 inside. So again, when this is getting crossed out right here, it's because it's 1 and it's implied right here. So then we have 24 divided by negative 8, and that is negative 3. Okay. So the nice thing about solving equations is that you could always check your answer. So checking your answer means you take the original problem, so we have 3x, and you take out the x, and you replace it with the number that you found. So I'm going to rewrite the problem, and then I'm going to put parentheses just to remind myself that that's where the variable was. And then I'm going to replace those x's, the two x's in the problem, with the negative 3. Okay, And then if on a test your teacher or me, we're not asking you to show your work, you can just type this right in your calculator. So I can just do 3 parentheses -3. So that means 3 times. So if you don't want to put the parentheses, you'd have to put times. And then -11. And again, I can click times because that's what this means here. Or I can put parentheses -3 and then +5. And if I'm right, I'm going to get 29, which I do. So we get 29 on both sides. So then we would know our answer is right. Now without a calculator, we would have -9 here. -11 times -3, that's 33 positive. And then -9 plus 33 plus 5, as you can see, is 29. So on my exams in this class, you can just write that the solution is -3. You can write x equals -3. Now on some online homework systems, it might be worded like this. And if it says the solution set is, so if it has the word set like that, you'll notice that it has these curly brackets. And then you would just type your answer inside there without the x equals. So again, I would accept this on an exam, or I would accept this. So again, if you see the curly brackets, you're just typing your solution inside it. All right, so our next example, let's go through the same steps. So the first step is to simplify. So since we have parentheses here, we're going to distribute by multiplying. So we're going to do -4 times 3, and either in your head or with a calculator, again, -4 times 3 is a -12, and then x. And then we have -4 times a -2. So remember, we have to look in front of the number to know that we are looking at that as a -2. So -4 times -2 is +8. And then I'm going to bring down the 3x plus 3. So we have distributed and then combined like terms. So if we look at the left side of this equation, we can't add these together because one has an x and one doesn't. If we look at the right hand side, same thing. So we are done with step 1. So that was step 1. So step 2 is we want the variable on one side, and we want to end up step 3, the constant on the other side. So I only want one variable in the problem. So there's an issue here. We have a 3x and we have a -12x. And they're on opposite sides of this equal sign. So it does not matter. You need to pick one and make it 0 out. So I'm going to go ahead and take this 3x. You could pick the -12x. So you could either do add 12x to both sides to make this -12x go away. Now I'm going to do -3x. It does not matter. The reason why I'm doing that is because most students like the x on the left side, but it really doesn't matter if that doesn't bother you. So then these are like terms. So 3x, take away 3x, that's 0x. So that's gone. That's why I'm crossing it out. And whatever I do to this side, I have to do on this side. Now, some students like to put a -3x here and write it horizontally like that, and then they combine their like terms like that. Whereas some students, instead of this notation, they would prefer writing -3x here because then it reminds them that these two go together. So it does not matter to me which style you use. So again, you're going to write the -3x underneath the -12x, or you can write it on the side, either in the front or in the back, and then combine your like terms. So -12x minus 3x, so that is -15x. So again, if you're needing to check that with your calculator, you're doing -12 minus 3, which is -15, or you're entering it in as -12 plus a -3. So then we're going to bring down our 8 and our 3. So that was step, we want to have one x. And then the next part of step 2 is we want this variable all by itself. So step 3 is we want this constant on the other side. So we need to get rid of the +8. So we're going to subtract 8 to both sides so that this would make 0. And then 3 minus 8 that as -5. And then the very last step, when we have the variable all by itself. So when this is all alone, the variable term is all alone, that is when we divide in an equation at the very end. And again, remember, we're always dividing by that exact same coefficient number so that this becomes 1x. And we know we don't have to write 1x in front of an x. So that's why we can just cross that part out and just bring down this x. So whatever we do here, we have to do on the right side. So we're dividing both sides by a -15. So in our directions at the beginning of our notes here, it says leave your answer as an integer. So an integer is this answer we got for the first problem, like -3. So an integer would be negative numbers like -3, -4, 0, 1, 2, 3. So they're not decimals, they're not fractions. So since the first problem came out to be -3, that's called an integer. Now this problem here, 15 does not go into 5. So this is going to be a fraction answer. So when we get a problem where the denominator does not go evenly into the numerator, that's when you're going to ask yourself what number goes into 5 and 15 and divide it out. So we are going to simplify this. Now, as far as the negatives go here, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So our final answer is going to be a positive. So these negatives just go away there. And then 5 goes into 5 and 5 goes into 15. So 5 divided by 5 is 1 and 15 divided by 5 is 3. So the solution that we get is x equals 1/3. So again, on a test, I would accept it if you wrote it like that. And on online homework systems, if you see the solution set and you see curly brackets like this, it just wants you to write your 1/3 inside there. Now let's check this with a calculator here. So if you're a little worried about, did you simplify this correctly? On a calculator, if we did -5 divided by -15, it gives it to us as a decimal. So on your calculator, if you click, so again, if you do 5 divided by 15 with your calculator, and then you click the second button here, and then you click the button that says FD. So it looks like an F with a little arrow, D. When you click this button here, it's going to go back and forth from fraction to decimal. And then you can see that you are successfully simplified that correctly. So if I click second FD again, it's going to take me back to the decimal answer. So if you wrote your answer as 0.3 repeating, that is going to be marked wrong because the direction says it wants a simplified fraction. So simplified just means make sure there is no number that can divide into the top and the bottom of the fraction, the numerator and denominator. So again, I love solving equations because you can always go back to the original problem and plug in wherever there's an x, plug in the answer you got. Now, again, if I don't ask you on a test to show your work for your check, which I don't, then you could just take your calculator and literally just type this in exactly how it is. So it's -4, parenthesis, and then there's a 3, and a 3 next to an x in algebra means times, so I'm going to click the times button. Now you could use the parenthesis for times as well. So times, and we got 1/3. Now to enter in 1/3, you're going to type in 1 and then the ABC button. So the ABC button means fraction. Or put a fraction bar. So it looks really weird. Look at what it looks like that. So that would mean 1/3. Okay, so then it says -2. So -2, and then there was a parenthesis. So again, I typed it in left to right exactly how it was given with the 1/3 in place of x. And then I'm going to click equals. So this whole side comes out to be 4. Now I'm going to do the right side. So I have a 3 next to an x, so that means times, and then I'm going to enter in my 1/3, and then plus 3. And if my answer is correct and I didn't make a mistake here, I should get 4. And we do. So then we're like, cool, we got that problem right.